Living in a foreign country can teach you many things you haven't thought about before in your life and how the world works outside where you were originally born. In my case, living abroad taught me valuable lessons that shaped how I move and live my life. Being in a land unknown and unfamiliar, having to understand a foreign language that's not remotely close to your native tongue, and figuring out basic ways of living and comprehending the formal process of doing anything in that country's culture and society is a lot to take in. All of those factors are daunting to many, and even for myself. But I still wanted to live abroad and see how life is different outside of America. And where did I go? Well, I went to Japan for both school and work. I chose this country since I had an interest in Japanese culture. My earliest form of appreciating any sort of Japanese culture was actually with Japanese sports cars. That's right. I'm a huge car enthusiast, and JDM cars were a huge influence growing up. Thanks to games like Need for Speed or movies like The Fast and the Furious, I was brought into the world of Japanese cars, and of course that linked to an interest in Japanese culture. When I was a kid, I was a huge fan of the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 9 MR, and that was my dream car back then. And, not so long after, being introduced to video games by Japanese developers such as Animal Crossing and Pokemon. And growing up as a kid, I wonder what it would be like to live in that country across the Pacific Ocean. So, in this video, I want to talk about those experiences of how I got there and what I had done, and then after explain how it taught me some valuable life lessons that shaped me to who I am today and how I perceive the world. First, let me talk about some of those stories to help understand how it led me to those lessons. In the late 2010s, I came up with a plan. I was just starting out learning Japanese at the time, and since I was a university student, I did my research to study abroad. After some consultation, recommendations, and research, I was approved and eligible to study in Japan for 1 school year. As expected, I was ecstatic when I was told about the news, and I remember spending my time during that summer vacation preparing for what I needed to do and taking in any advice from my peers and other resources. I should note, it wasn't my first time in Japan. I actually went there a year prior to studying abroad for a vacation, and during that trip, I was convinced that I really wanted to study here. And so that day came. I arrived at the airport, was picked up, and headed toward my dorm. I was introduced to the staff and some Japanese students who lived there. I was exhausted from my flight and moving all about, but I remember before I went to sleep in my new dorm, I said to myself, I did it. But there was no time to relax, and I had a lot of orientation to do, opening a bank account, and getting any documentation sorted out. It was a lot, and overwhelming. And all of those people were new to me. I didn't have any support of my family being around. And even though there were some people I knew, it was pretty much me being alone and doing everything myself, following directions from my host school. However, despite the tremendous amount of work, I settled in and went to my classes. At my host school, I would soon meet new friends and even my best friend who was also a study abroad student. Outside of classes, traveling and going to different places were exciting and something I never thought I would ever do. You see, I'm an introvert, and I like to mind my own business, but being able to do so many fun activities and meeting new people in Japan told me there was a lot to appreciate in life, and I should make sure that I'm trying new things, even if I might not like it at first glance. Speaking in Japanese, despite how broken it was, allowed me to try and put an effort. Learning how their society functions and respecting their normal daily life is also a point worth mentioning. After some time living in Japan, I too felt like a normal resident, despite being a foreigner. And there's a big difference being a foreigner residing in Japan compared to a foreigner who is there for tourism. Foreigners, especially those who've lived there for years, understand how things function and how their values won't always win the minds of a Japanese person and their values. But those foreign residents respect their way of living and even follow those values as well. Compare that to foreign tourists who don't always respect their way of thinking. I get it. When we travel to another country for vacation, we get excited, as we should be. We want to appreciate the culture in that society, but not every tourist is respectful. Sometimes, it's simple as just not knowing they're doing something wrong. In that case, it's not much of a big deal as long as that tourist understands their mistake and they by no means wants to cause any sort of trouble. But there are other tourists who don't do that. I won't dive deep into it, but I'll say that if you are going to another country for vacation, or heck, even if you are moving there, just respect the way they live and how they do things. Don't give the excuse that the way you live and do things in your country are different, so therefore that's what you are used to and they need to understand where you are coming from. At the end of the day, those people do not care about your way of living. Not as an insult, but because that's not how they live and they are not willing to change for you. Maybe some will, but definitely not all. You're in their court, so you play by their rules. Yes, I do think you should still be treated kindly and fairly, but know that they do not have to think the way you do. And that's okay. That's just a part in trying to learn and appreciate another culture. It's not always easy for you to get at first, but with some effort, you start to adapt for them instead of vice versa. In my experience, my study abroad buddies, as well as myself, understood that we come from many different places all around the world, but one thing we knew for sure was to not cause a scene. Not to be that guy. We want to love and appreciate Japan for what it is, despite its flaws, and of course, enjoy ourselves. So, I made sure to enjoy the activities and classes, use my Japanese as much as I can instead of English, and just be in the moment that I know won't last forever. Because indeed, nothing lasts forever. And not so long after, my time abroad was finished. I packed up my things, a bit saddened but with optimism that it wasn't the end of my adventures in Japan. There was a new journey, a new chapter to partake in. So I went back to America for the time being until I completed my studies. Fast forward again sometime later, I moved back to Japan, this time for work. Just like before, the process to find a job in Japan felt the same to when I applied to study abroad, so I won't repeat my words for the sake of not being redundant. However, because this was my second time moving to Japan, I was already experienced living in the country, so settling in wasn't so overwhelming the second go around. Still, a lot of work to do settling in and new things to learn, but I didn't have the fear of how to do this or that and being in the unknown. Honestly, when I came back, my first reaction was, yep, I have returned. This time for work. Sounds like a less exciting reaction, but I was extremely happy. It was a back at it again kind of vibe. The difference was that I was in the workforce and being an employee compared to being a student. And there is a big difference. As a student, I didn't worry too much about anything besides making sure my grades were good. But as an employee, I became more concerned with paying my bills, what am I going to eat for dinner, what are my monthly expenses, how do I see a doctor, or how does insurance work, and making sure I'm doing my job right, all while I'm in a foreign country. If you know anything about Japanese work culture, it can be very hard and stressful. Almost everything is done by the book, and when your superior wants you to do something, it will get done. No questions asked. And I felt sorry for some of my coworkers who were just bogged with so many tasks. I didn't really have to worry about my duties, and because I was a foreigner, I was treated differently when it came to my work. But I was impressed by their work ethic. They knew how to do everything on time, knew how to be professional, and knew how to do everything efficiently. And I really respected that. I just wish they were given more breaks is all. Outside of work, just like before studying abroad, I spent it exploring and enjoying Japan for what it has to offer. I want to mention as well that when I was a student, I lived in the city, but when I came back to Japan for work, I was in the countryside, and therefore my living situation was different. First off, the Japanese countryside is beautiful, no doubt about it. I love nature, so it was great. And sadly, not a lot of people, especially foreigners, get the opportunity to explore these kinds of places outside cities such as Tokyo, Osaka, or Kyoto. You also can't access a lot of these areas via train, so that's also an issue. When I lived in the city, I had access to many resources that were all close by or accessible by train. So many things you can do and go in a short distance. However, in the countryside, those places are farther out and it can get kinda boring sometimes. Finding people my age in the countryside was more difficult because more Japanese young adults move to cities where there are more opportunities, and is one of the factors as to why there are population crises in the countryside. That's not to say I didn't find friends, because I did. It did require more planning on my side whenever I hung out with a friend, and as a foreigner, it does get kinda lonely sometimes. But since I'm an introvert, I don't mind being by myself too. When I was by myself, I spent it enjoying Japan just by myself and being surrounded by so much scenery, nature, and enjoying the peace that I had there. Plus, not every day needed to be fun, but just relaxing. Like waking up in my home, doing nothing but just doing my hobbies, opening the windows, letting the fresh air blow through. Nothing special, but my peace. I just had an ordinary life, exploring new things, but still having to go to work. Working in Japan gave me a different perspective of living in the country compared to being a student. I was more experienced, not a lot of fantasizing, but being in a real job and living a real life in Japan as an adult. Attending special events with coworkers, following the Japanese process of getting work done, and how to manage my life outside of work are just a couple of things worth pointing out since it was different than my student life in Japan. And having those two perspectives were influential in what I learned overall. So, in the end, after several years, my contract was completed, and I decided to move back to America instead of finding another job in Japan. My reason being, I just wanted to do other things in life. That's it. And these are my experiences living in Japan. But what did it teach me, like the title in this video suggests? Some of them I already somewhat explained a bit earlier in the video, but we'll discuss more here. First off, especially when I went abroad the first time, was to take a leap of faith and diving into the unknown. That's not an easy thing to do, and if you lived in a foreign country, I'm sure you understand that feeling as well. But that leap of faith allowed me to be more open to doing and trying new things in general. Also, it felt more comfortable to reach out and find new resources to utilize whenever I needed something. Where do I go? What do I do? And how do I solve this issue? All of that became way easier when I lived abroad because I had to rely on not only myself, but knowing where to search when something was out of my field of knowledge. Whether I wanted to or not, I was essentially forced to do that kind of stuff since I was alone in unfamiliar land. I had to adapt alone whether I wanted to or not. Not in every situation, and to that I say thank you to the people who have helped me learn, but a lot of the time it was just done by myself. Another thing that I learned was appreciating and valuing myself for trying. I am by no means a perfect person, and I failed at a lot of things during different points in my life. But Japan taught me that there is a lot to love about myself. The fact that I kept marching on and made it to Japan made me realize that I have done a lot of work to get where I wanted to be. Not every situation goes my way, but I found methods to get back on track for the goals I want to achieve. And it boils down to, if I can make it all the way to Japan and deal with every task to get there as well as the obligations while being there, then I feel that I can do almost anything as long as I put my mind to it. On the topic of being able to put in the work and trying, I want to emphasize too that not everyone gets the opportunity to live abroad or just do something they dream of doing, or at the very least, being very difficult to achieve. Therefore, my opportunity reminded me to always be grateful for everything that came to me throughout my life, since not everyone gets to have what I have or what I have done. Because I am fortunate, I also need to be aware to never use what I have to gloat or brag about those opportunities. Rather, I want my experiences to inspire and encourage people to keep going, to teach people that they can. No matter how hard it may be, it can happen. Sure, some people might not have to put in more work compared to others, but that does not matter. What matters is your life that you want to live. Your timeline is different from everyone else's. I learned to stop comparing myself to others and continue to just keep living. Only using comparison as research, but not for competition. And being in Japan itself, I learned to be more grateful for the things we have in America. I think many people born outside of Japan highly praise the country for many things that they have. How their society just seems so much better than our own. But after living there myself, it's not all perfect. In daily life, I learned about the imperfections and issues it currently faces. A population crisis, an aging population. How are Japanese youths going to carry the country when there are so many elderly? And how is that going to affect their work and pensions and whatnot? I've seen firsthand the many old abandoned homes and buildings in the countryside as well as suburban areas. A time that has gone by because of those factors. But actually living and experiencing the country's issues firsthand taught me to understand how people from different places experience different problems from my own. They have a different set of problems that need solving. That those differing issues makes me someone who wants to listen and be aware more, and being more empathetic to people not just in Japan, but in America and all around the world. I think many foreigners tend to overhype Japan because it does have many cool things, a unique lifestyle, and it is efficient in many areas. For example, anime and manga, technology, trains, JDM sports cars, J-pop music, beautiful art, and rich history are just a few things that make many fall in love with the country. It's different from other countries. Japan's soft power is really strong, and I think that's a good thing. Japan's industries produces some of the best products and services that we all come to love, and is why tourism in Japan is so big. But Japan is not like it is in anime all of the time. There are aspects of it, yes, But it's not the full story. This doesn't have to be a Japan thing either. It can be with any country that someone may fantasize about. But going back to why I'm grateful for the things we have in America is because living in Japan helped me see the truth and imperfections that can get overlooked when we become too obsessed with a country and its society. Still, I'm happy that people can appreciate and respect cultures from their own. But to remember, there are caveats. America also has its own set of problems as well. But whenever I return to America from Japan, I'm reminded that actually, there are many things here to be grateful for, even compared to Japan. Being happy for the life and place I was raised in. There was a lot to love about my home. Things that I overlooked myself in the very same places I'm familiar with. Being in Japan helped me see how different cultures function for better or worse. The world is not perfect. It's full of chaos and unpredictability. It is not fair from the get-go. However, that doesn't mean my life has to be in chaos too. Thinking that the world screwed us over something that we want to attain is not a good excuse to use when something doesn't go our way. Looking back, my family supported me and gave me a life and many opportunities. They tried their very best to make my time on this planet as enjoyable as possible by sacrificing a lot of their time and energy. Gave me a home, food, and much more in America. And they still support me to this day. Also, I have to be accountable for myself, and my own actions impacts the direction of my own future. No place is perfect, but I will adapt to any environment I go to next and to remember where I came from and the values I carry. And on the topic of values, being in a foreign country taught me to not force those values to others who don't follow or agree with mine. I want to live my life in the way that fits me best, as we all do. People won't always see you eye to eye to how you perceive life. They will disagree with you, and some might even insult you. I noticed how important it is to simply just acknowledge that they don't have to be on your side 100% of the time. And that's okay, and it's actually not much of a big deal. It's not a problem, unless it's actually threatening. But in the case of just how people choose to live their everyday lives, don't force your way of living onto them. Only if they want to learn more about you, you can if you want. More importantly, find people who do align with your values than one you want to convince. Furthermore, being the foreigner in Japan, I learned I'm not special, and that's not a bad thing. I've met many people, both Japanese and foreigners, but lots of those people also have come and gone in my life. They don't have to stay forever, and I learned to not take it personally when they do. People change. Values change. Just because I'm a foreigner who can speak Japanese doesn't mean the Japanese people around me were obligated to treat me in a special manner, nor did they have to like me. I was just a dude who lived and worked in the country. A resident. I wasn't given any special treatment, but rather adapting to my environment and getting assistance when needed. Sure, some people did interact with me slightly differently, but that does not mean that I was given God treatment. I learned to become more humble and respectful to others, especially when they help me. Last but not least, living abroad taught me to keep learning and to keep expanding my knowledge, to better understand what I want for myself, what intrigues me, how I'm going to achieve the next goal, and how can I better understand others and where they are coming from. Just like I mentioned about Japan's problems earlier, I want to understand other people's problems and see why it matters to them, even if it doesn't impact me and my life whatsoever. I don't need to be the one to solve their problems, but to be someone who can at the very least acknowledge that there's something that they want to resolve, to be there in support of their issues they face, even if I can't do much for them. Well, those are just some things that I learned while being abroad. Those experiences have and still affect the way I live now, and thanks to it, moving forward never felt so much easier. I've become someone who likes learning more about my world around me, but also remembering to take care of myself and what I want for my future and how to live in the present. These were my Animal Crossing moments. Yeah, see what I did there? I'm incorporating my Animal Crossing experiences with real-world experiences too. But hear me out. Just like in Animal Crossing, I moved to a faraway land brand new to me. Along the way, I met many new people. Some of them stayed in my life, but many have come and gone, and some of them don't really like being around me or are open to doing stuff with me. But I was just a resident living my life that suits me while also trying to interact with my environment. Getting familiar with the community and learning about my fellow neighbors' daily lives just like in the games. I would like to add that it was also like a Pokemon journey as well. I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. To go abroad was my real test, and to train myself is my cause. I have traveled across the land, searching far and wide, each person to understand the problems they held inside. Pokemon isn't just a game that wants you to become the champion of the region. It makes the player go on a journey, travel to new places, finding new friends, and overcoming tough obstacles. Just like in the games, I had my own goals I want to achieve, but I haven't forgot the journey that brought me to where I am now. Even after the game is completed, there's still more to see. So, that's the end of the video, and I hope you liked learning about my experiences living abroad or living in Japan, as well as the impact it had on me. This is one of those videos that I wanted to make outside of video games, but I still added Animal Crossing and Pokemon into the mix, so technically it's still relevant to the channel, right? I talked about video games. Anyways, I got other videos I have in mind, so hope you look forward to what I have in the future. And what were your thoughts on this video? Did you like this kind of content of storytelling and want to see more? And what were your thoughts on this topic as well? I'd like to hear what you have to say about them in the comments, and I'm curious to read them. Do you have experiences living abroad, and did you learn anything that you hold dearly? Or are you someone wanting to go abroad someday and seeing what the world has to offer? Give this video a like and subscribe, especially if there's more content like this you want to see. I did want this channel to talk about stuff that interests me and tell stories, and even though it started with video games, that was just a part of those interests. And clearly from this video, this was also something else that was fun for me to tell. For this channel, I want these storytelling videos to be known as cozy tales, where I can just talk about things unrelated to video games and just stories about things that I've done in my life, or talk about topics that just seem interesting to me. But until next time, I hope you all well, and remember to stay calm and stay chill, everyone. Bye.